Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
Morning, David.
How are you?
Fine, yourself?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oops.
It is 8:57. We will wait 3 minutes. It is June already. You're on mute, Tony, so I couldn't hear you.
I said halfway through June almost,
Yeah,
Seems to go fast.
it is really going fast. Truly. I figure as we get older, each month is a smaller percentage of our life, and therefore it feels quicker, I guess,
Thank you, David.
Yes.
Or
It's like an
maybe
hour.
it's a bigger percentage of what we have left.
Oh, yeah, but you don't know what you have left. You don't know what the denominator is, do you?
Yeah, but it's less it's less than the other one.
Yeah, I just saw my mom, who's going to be 102 on June 21st. It's really strange to have somebody in your life that's 102 years old.
I got a good friend who's 99. He'll be 100 in June and still drives, believe it or not. Not on I-75 though, if he's smart.
Don't say that in front of Sergeant Witten that he still
No,
drives.
actually, he's probably stays the speed limit. Probably not a speeder.
Gotcha. One, two, three, four, five. All right.
Everybody ready to celebrate the 250th anniversary coming up? Before you know it, that'll be here.
Yeah.
It will.
My sister was an exchange student 50 years ago in America. I remember the festivities then, photos and amazing.
Too, when Lloyd was alive, we had this big celebration. I think we did. Oh no, that was New Year's Eve. We did for the so not 4th of July. We did a big one New Year's Eve. That was huge.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's 9 o'clock, and I welcome. My clock is chiming. That it's 9 o'clock. Just waiting for it to stop. Okay, it's 9 o'clock, and I welcome everybody to the June 9th meeting of the Captiva Community Panel. I will do a roll call. David Mintz is here. Bruce McDonald is not. Sandy Stillwell Youngquist is not. Margarita Maville
Is here?
Thank you. Ken Suarez called me. He has a medical procedure this morning. John Wade is not here. Michael Bennett is here.
Here.
Good morning. John Rosen is here.
Sure.
Good morning. Jay Brown, I'm not sure. Jay Brown is here. He just popped on the screen, so I will. Good morning, Jay. If you can hear us, we see you. Linda Laird is here.
Here.
And Bob Randau is here.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, we clearly have a quorum. And I am going to first ask if people would like to make a motion to pass the minutes from the May meeting.
So moved.
Okay, I would, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, the only thing I would say is the third paragraph on the second page, and I'll talk to Ken about this, has some details incorrect regarding what the appeal was of the Judge Schenko case. So I will go offline with Ken after the meeting and discuss that with him just to make that correction. But do I have a motion? We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor of passing the minutes, say aye, please.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, any noes? None, thank you, it passes. The first thing on our agenda, as always, is Sergeant Witten, who I saw, there he is, right in the middle of the screen. Sergeant, good morning, and if you'd like to give a report, we'd love to hear it.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate you guys having me. Sergeant Adam Went with Lee County Sheriff's Office. We've had a good month this last month. The Memorial Day weekend went smooth. No really issues to report from that holiday. We did see a decrease in the number of visitors and calls for service we had there for a little while, but we're seeing that start to increase again now as kids are getting out of school. So, we're probably going to see a little bit more activity on the islands, even though a lot of our part-time residents are currently up north. Starting off with the stats for May. We responded to or handled 488 calls for service. We made one arrest, which was related to a traffic offense. We investigated 2 crashes. One was just a very minor parking lot fender bender that we're pretty used to seeing on a consistent basis. There's really no preventing those. And then the other was a single bicycle. It was an e-bike that experienced a blown front tire. Kind of a good opportunity to remind people, if you're driving around on an e-bike, I definitely would inspect your equipment pretty frequently. In this case, the person had purchased the e-bike 2 days prior and the tire blew out. She got ejected over the handlebars. So, the e-bikes, you're obviously usually traveling at a pretty good clip. So it's important to make sure that the equipment's up to par. Then we issued 80 citations and warnings for the month of May. The next holiday weekend that we have coming up is obviously going to be July 4th. We're already talking about the 250th anniversary. That's going to be before our next panel meeting. So I just wanted to kind of mention that. Just like any of the holiday weekends, a couple statutes and ordinances that I wanted to bring up to remind people. First of all, obviously involving fireworks. July 4th is one of the weekends that's exempted, or excuse me, one of the days that's exempted in Florida statute for lighting off fireworks. However, you cannot light off fireworks on the beach. There's a Lee County ordinance prohibiting that. So although fireworks can be used on that holiday, they have to be used in a legal area. Reason being, obviously, fireworks cause a lot of litter on the beach. It could be disruptive to sea turtles, but also just the safety hazard that comes along with that. So if you do light off fireworks, please remember fireworks and alcohol do not go hand in hand. That's a big source of calls for service on July 4th. And just be, good neighbors. Just try to light these things off if you are in a safe area that's not going to be impacting your neighbors, or especially the fire department's on. They might mention, things like dry vegetation and whatnot. Obviously, just like any of the holidays I mentioned, open containers are prohibited in public spaces in Lee County per ordinance. So please keep that in mind. Then lastly, something we encounter on these holiday weekends, the noise ordinance. Just a reminder that Captiva has a pretty restrictive noise ordinance. There's no amplified sound after 10 p.m. That's usually going to be a source of calls for service. That sound cannot be heard from an adjacent parcel of private property. So keep that in mind. Obviously, it's a holiday weekend. People are going to be enjoying themselves, but just be a good neighbor. We would prefer to not have to get involved if possible. We prefer that people just make the choice to look out for their neighbors. Something else that is a current event, I'm sure you guys have seen, Blind Pass has opened. If you're not in town, Blind Pass did start to clear out, and the gap is widening more and more each day, it seems like. So with that, we've seen an increase in visitors fishing the bridge and the adjacent beach already. And we anticipate that to continue, the number of people that are coming out and enjoying that area. With that, I know in the past there have occasionally been issues related to littering, trespassing, things like that. So just want to let the community know we're going to be out there. You're going to see us proactively enforcing fishing regulations, littering laws, and trespass laws in that area. So you're going to see us out there, and we just ask all of our visitors to be good stewards of our community out here. And then along those same lines, in that area, we have had water rescues in the past. And as that pass continues to open, we're going to see shifting sand and different rip currents and just unexpected waves and things like that. So I would definitely encourage anyone that wants to go swimming in the area to use good safety. And I would probably encourage you to find another place if you're actually going to be swimming. But just keep that in mind. That area is going to be a little bit unstable. And then lastly, something that Deputies Lusk and Zumbrum asked me to bring up in the meeting that they've seen in the past, but have also kind of seen increase lately, is related to golf cart safety and seating in golf carts. Two of the biggest issues that they see, which can be an enforcement challenge, are one, parents holding juveniles on their lap while driving a golf cart or while seated in a golf cart. Unfortunately, this is not, it's a bit of a loophole or a gray area in the statute. There's not really a statute that specifically mentions seating in a golf cart, in areas that golf carts can be operated. So there's no law that says you can't do that. However, if you get in a crash with a child on your lap, I don't care how much you love your kid, you're not going to be able to overcome the forces of gravity. And we have seen, actually, there was a crash that wasn't listed in my report because it wasn't reported to us this last month. But it's my understanding some medical attention was rendered to somebody who had a single vehicle golf cart crash where the child was seated on the parent's lap and had impacted the steering wheel as a result of the crash. So, that's something to keep in mind. We are going to be, educating people as we can. However, it is a bit of a challenge for enforcement. It may be something to consider in the future, looking at potentially adding to the ordinance, since it is kind of a black hole in the law at that current moment. And then also something that they're seeing as well is just having more people occupy a golf cart than the golf cart's rated for. So if you have a 4-seater golf cart, we're occasionally seeing, 6 people trying to cram in to get to dinner. People are on vacation here, and when you get into the vacation mindset, you don't really think anything bad can happen. But we want to make sure with these golf carts that people are making good decisions and being safe. And then obviously, you guys probably know there's a bit of a difference between the golf carts and the low-speed vehicles. And some of our visitors might not necessarily always know that if they're renting a place that has an LSV. They think of it as a golf cart, even though it is a registered motor vehicle. So a reminder, if you're driving a low-speed vehicle, which is one of the golf carts that has a tag on it, is equipped to operate on the road and is registered, all the same laws apply as a motor vehicle. So all the same laws related to seatbelts, seating, child seats and booster seats, things like that, still apply. So keep that in mind. And that is, like I said, it's also kind of a challenge for us as far as enforcement, because we may pull over a vehicle that's a low-speed vehicle, and we're educating and warning, citing, whatever the case may be, the driver of that vehicle for seatbelt violations, child car seat violations. And as we're on that stop, a golf cart drives by with the parent and the child on their lap. And obviously the people we're stopping are like, hey, what gives? Look at them, they're doing the same thing we're doing. And unfortunately, we're just not able to enforce that when it comes to the golf carts. So keep that in mind. And we tell people, hey, listen, it's good that we're stopping and educating you because it's going to prevent an injury down the road. And most people are on board with that. But just keep in mind, there is a distinction between those two types of vehicles, and it presents sometimes a little bit of a enforcement challenge for us. So just keep that in mind. That's all I have to report for this month. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Does anyone have any panel members have questions or a question for Sergeant Whitten? Ken from the audience?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay, Sergeant, can I just ask you, you said you had 488 calls for service. Can you just give us an idea of what kind of calls for service you're talking about? That seems like an awful lot.
Yeah, a lot of that is proactive. So that encompasses any call that we open on our computer, whether we're opening the call proactively or we're receiving a call either from 911 or a non-emergency number is going to be included in that. So that's proactive and reactive. I would say this last month, the majority of our calls for service that people are actually dialing and calling us would be, we deal with a lot of alarms and 911 hang-up calls. It's pretty common out here, especially we have a lot of houses that are, either unoccupied or, partially occupied. So we deal with alarm calls and things of that nature. We had a couple trespass type complaints, and then just your normal, especially in our evening and overnight hours, we're often responding to disturbances or alcohol related incidents. I can't give you a breakdown exactly what the numbers are proactive versus reactive, but on Captiva and our islands, a lot of those numbers are proactive. So I give that to you, not necessarily, it's not a trend based thing. I can't tell you last month there was 300 calls, this month there was 400 calls. That means things are busier. It could just be that one of our deputies was on vacation for a week, and so they weren't generating calls for service during that time. But a lot of what we do is proactive because we're trying to address issues before they become bigger issues. An example of that is actually yesterday, one of our business owners, shout out to the Bubble Room, notified us of a flyer that was posted on a telephone pole advertising an underage party today on the beach near the Mucky Duck. And we were able to use some investigative means to track down the people who had actually posted that, found them on social media, through some tactics, eventually found contact information for them and their parents and where they were staying, and we were able to get that shut down. So we're going to be in that area. But that's an example of out here, we're doing a lot of legwork to make sure that we're getting ahead of issues before they become bigger issues. What could have been a out of control party tonight has hopefully been avoided through those types of efforts. So you'll see a lot of that. A lot of those calls for service are us trying to get ahead of things.
Wow. Thank you, Sergeant. Anything else for the Sergeant? All right. Terrific. Again, thank you. Next, we have the Captiva Fire District update. With us today is Jeff Brown, who is the chairman of the Board of Fire Commissioners. He's sitting in, I guess, for Jeff Powell, who's away.
Yes, thank you, David. Yes, the chief is at a conference in Orlando, so he's unable to attend the call. Just briefly, I also want to reiterate what the sergeant said regarding golf cart safety. A couple of months ago, we had a serious golf cart accident, and we learned that that individual did end up passing away. So, fatalities do happen with golf carts. It's incredibly important that you are safe when you're driving those vehicles around. We also did have that family come into the station with some injuries as well. We talked about it at our last meeting, which was earlier this week or late last week. We actually have more golf cart accidents than we do vehicle accidents on the island. I think that's just the nature of the island. With respect to some fire department business, we did get from the appraisal office the value of Captiva. Not really a surprise. It's relatively flat compared to last year, maybe up a point or two. So property assessments, really no change to that. Although individually, your property may go up or down depending on your particular situation. But as the whole, the island is relatively flat. And then coupled with that, in the news has been the governor's initiative to eliminate or reduce property taxes on Captiva. The way that affects us, it really shifts the burden for fire services to non-homestead properties. On the island, we have approximately 12% of the valuation of the total assessed valuation are homestead properties. So 88% are non-homestead or commercial. Those would see property tax increases, their property taxes rise, whereas homestead, you might get a little bit of a break. It's not much in terms of the values on Captiva, but it is somewhat of a break. That, I guess, is going to public referendum in November. So that's not law, and it won't affect us this year, and probably I don't think it will affect us next year either. But it is something to watch and do your research when you go to the polls to vote on that. One other piece of fire department business, we did extend an offer on a piece of property south of the S-curve. It's a 5-acre parcel. The offer was not accepted because it is currently under contract with another buyer. We will find out more at the end of the week whether or not that the buyer that has the property under contract is going to go forward or not, and if we have an opportunity to pursue it. But we did authorize the chief to make an official offer. Are there any questions?
Is what the amount of the offer, is that public information?
Yes, it's public information. The offer was $4.5 million. The property is located at 16475/16495 Captiva Drive. It's a total of 5 acres. There's 2 strap numbers that make up 5 acres.
And that would possibly be a helicopter landing at the south end of the island.
We're looking at that as helicopter landing zone. There's plenty of space for that. It's also would serve as a staging area post storm for utility trucks, landscaping vehicles, whatever we need to get the island back on track, as well as potentially a training site for the firefighters. We had discussed with EMS the possibility of relocating down there. We're still having discussions with them about that. From our perspective, it makes sense to spread the resources across the island because our firefighters have the same capabilities as EMS. So if we have them located in 2 different places, we're able to respond to calls quicker south of the S-curve with EMS down there. And we can still respond to the same time levels in the village and up into South Seas, because our guys are still going to be located at the fire station. In any case, we have to take a look at the space constraints we have in the current building. We had 4 people per shift, and then we added EMS, and then we had to go to 5 people per shift, and we still have EMS. So we're rapidly running out of room in the station. And looking forward, which is what our job is as commissioners, 5 years from now, as the island continues to develop and the density, whether or not increases or not, that's still to be resolved. But there's certainly going to be more development on the island, which is going to put, maybe cause us to even add 1 more person per shift. And at that point, we would simply be out of space in the current station. So we're looking to extend the life of the current station by looking for, alternative location for EMS. And we'll continue to have discussions with them. Whether this is the answer or not remains to be seen, but maybe there are some other options that we need to pursue.
Jeff, has there been any discussion about the current helicopter landing zone on the routes, the former Rauschenberg property?
The only discussions that we've had have been around continuing its current use until such time as the resort determines that it's no longer available for us to use. It's private property; they have that right. We don't have any easement or any restriction on that, and we're very appreciative of the fact that they're allowing us to continue to use that to evacuate people, and we do use it, roughly about once a month. But as far as a permanent situation, that's in its present form, that's not going to happen.
So that's still something we have to keep focus on.
We still have to address the helicopter landing zone for the village and or the north end of the resort.
Right.
And my hope is that as the county and Timbers work through their development of the Rauschenberg property, that we can incorporate something into that would provide for public safety.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. That was very comprehensive. That was helpful. Any questions for Jeff from the panel? Ken, any questions from the community?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jeff. I appreciate it. We all appreciate it. Yeah. Next is a CEPD update from Brighton Hurd. I saw him somewhere. There he is, right in the middle.
Thank you, David. Good morning. I'll get started with some of the highlights of our board meeting that we held yesterday. So our lobbyist, Nick Matthews, and I applied for $500,000 through the state for additional funding to allow supplemental dune planting funds, but unfortunately they reduced it to $250,000, and at least that amount will be included in the general appropriations budget. So later this year, that money will be available for contracting to use to help reinforce the dunes with a more biodiverse mixture of vegetation. The previous allocation that we received last year was $500,000 for iguana and Australian pine removal. We've been carrying out that program for the past 9 months or so, and it will come to an end at the end of this month. If you or any of your neighbors still have some Australian pines that you'd like to have removed free of charge, just give our office a call and we'll coordinate all of those efforts. The board did decide yesterday to not continue the iguana program after funding runs out at the end of this month, so there will probably be a break in iguana control, and if folks need help with that, they may want to reach out to one of our specialists and contract them individually. The final apportionment is contracted with Governmental Management Services. We're going to work with them over the next month to complete the final apportionment and have them certify it. We expect a draft to be prepared and ready for the July board meeting. That apportionment is due to the county on September 15th, so we should be still ahead of schedule. As Jeff mentioned, the property tax bills that have been introduced likely will have some impact on ad valorem revenue for the district. We're still assessing those impacts and trying our best to determine exactly how we'll be affected, but it looks like at the very least it's likely to be reduced overall. Special assessment collections shouldn't be affected at all by this bill, so we're thankful for that. And the last update I have is that yesterday I gave my 2 weeks notice. I've been offered an incredible opportunity in Louisiana that I just cannot pass up. And so I'm very thankful for everyone who's been so incredibly helpful and supportive of me in the past year here. And I hope that I get to tell some of you all goodbye before I leave.
Wow, that's quite a report. Is there, I have a question for you, but before I ask it, are there any questions from the panel for Brighton? Can anybody in the community?
No.
Okay, Brighton, you said that, and I'm sure I got it right. You said something about the iguana control that that CEPD took over from when the panel initially started paying Alfredo to control iguanas on Captiva. Did you state that you're no longer CEPD is no longer going to fund that, Alfredo, and the process of controlling iguanas on Captiva?
Yes, we were currently being completely reimbursed for all of those expenditures, but there will be no reimbursement at the end of July or end of June. So the board decided to table that until there potentially are other funds available, or if they determine that there's a real need to re-engage those experts.
Well, on what basis are they going to determine whether there's a need? I mean, obviously, there's been a need to control iguanas on Captiva now for quite a few years. And Alfredo has our view, and we were doing it like 2 times a week, I think, now he was out there, was obviously having an impact because I think people felt that the iguana population has not exploded in the same way it had in the past. But I think there would be some concern that if we stop doing any iguana control, that we're going to have the problem that we had a few years ago where they were all over the island. So I just raised this with the panel. If the CEPD is basically no longer going to fund Alfredo's work on the island, I think the panel has to address again how we want to address that issue. I don't think we just want to let it lapse at this point. I mean, we don't want to lose Alfredo. I don't know how many iguana control activists there are around. I know Margot Reith is a good iguana killer, but I don't think we count on her to control the population. So I think we need to discuss this. Brighton, you're actually in effect laying off Alfredo by the end of June, at the end of June.
Yes, sir.
Is he aware of that at this point?
Yes, he is. He actually just took over. He bought a pest control company from someone that he's been working with for quite a while. So I think he's going to balance his efforts between wildlife trapping and pest control. So he'll. It sounds like he'll be okay, but I did forewarn him many times and the other control experts that it was a potential fate at the end of this month that the board could potentially choose to not continue funding those efforts. So,
Brighton, did the CEPD attempt to get an additional award to keep the iguana control going, the invasive species?
well, as I understand it, it's best not to ask for too many different grants at the same time. I think that FWC gave us the $500,000 grant for that last year, and this year we asked them for one more grant, but instead of it being to control iguanas and to remove Australian pine. It was to replace additional vegetation. We tried to get the approval to use some of the previous funds to allow for supplemental plantings to replace some of the pine trees that were being removed, but they didn't feel it was consistent with the grant. So the commissioners wanted to go after additional funding specifically for plants this year.
So am I correct in the commissioners, is a sort of like the strategy of not to get funding for the iguanas?
I don't think that it was a strategic decision in any way. I think it was more of just, if you have one ask, what would your ask be? And they decided that the ask would be for supplemental vegetation funding instead of the iguana control.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, I want to raise this question to the panel members at this point. Do we want, I mean, is there some consensus, or do we need some discussion as to whether the panel should take some initiative at this point to figure out how to keep Alfredo on the island?
Are we talking about 50,000 per year? What were we talking about?
I believe you were paying Alfredo $6,000 a month prior to the grant, and then we bumped him up a few days, so then he was at $8,000 a month, and we had two different companies working, so we were spending $16,000 a month on iguana control.
Do the board members have any feelings about this? My orientation is that I would like to see Ken get the details on the costs from Brighton offline, obviously, and who the other company is besides Alfredo, and then to contact both Alfredo and whoever the other iguana hunter was, and see what their availability is. I don't know if Alfredo's already made plans to not be on Captiva in July, or what. So Ken, I would ask, with the panel's permission, would ask Ken to get as much information as he can, and then if the panel agrees, to figure out if we can get some funding from somewhere, or we consider other options in terms of continuing iguana control. So how do the panel members feel about that? John, Tony, Jay? I know Tony's not a panel member now, but he's on chair of one of our committees. Mike?
Makes sense to me, Dave.
Yeah, Tony?
We've done it before, David, and weren't we paying Alfredo $25,000 a month, the panel, when we were held responsibility for a while to try to have an iguana program? Weren't we paying him $25,000 a year, or
A year.
Year.
It was a year.
It
Yeah.
was a year.
Yeah. Tony?
Do you know how effective it is? In other words, if we're paying X amount a month, do we get a report, and I'm not aware of it, of how many iguanas he actually takes off of us each month, or do we know, or each day he's there?
Yeah, we did get a report when he was when we were working with him. We did get a report, and I think we can continue to do that if we decide to keep him in our employ in some way.
Is this other company doing the same?
I don't know.
Yes, it's been a requirement of the grant that they take photos of everything that they
Makes
harvest
sense.
every day
Okay.
and quantify it by region of the island and things like that.
Gotcha. Thank you,
Age.
Brian.
Brighton, would you be willing to share the past results with us to enable us to review that and maybe formulate some budget of where we should be focusing if the panel decides to continue this program? Because if you ignore it for a short period of time, they'll multiply faster than you can dispose of them.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's not a problem.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
thank you, John. So Ken, could you touch base with Brighton, get as much information as you can in terms of their effectiveness, the costs, get the contact numbers for Alfredo and the other company, and then get back to us, maybe through you can send me an email with some of that information, and I'll get it to the panel, and then either we, and based on whether we need to engage them immediately, or whether we can wait to the July meeting, you could let us know that, and then we can proceed from there. I would hate to see us back to where we were, where they were all over the island. I don't know if Alfredo was the deterrent from that continuing, or whether it was the hurricanes. I mean, I just don't know. But I think we don't want to lose control of this.
Absolutely. I'll follow up with Brighton. Brighton, when is your last day?
Uh, Next Friday.
Okay, so I'll reach out after this meeting. We can get something going this week, and I'll try to get stuff out to the panel by the end of this week,
Okay.
if possible.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Did we,
Thank
when we were running the iguana program before CEPD took it over, did we make any conclusions about how effective the program was? Does anybody recall?
I think he always reported animals caught or killed.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
yes, and
I remember getting that, but I don't know if we ever reached a conclusion if he was making a dent in the iguana population or we were accomplishing anything. Yeah, we were getting reports of how many animals were disposed of, but I don't recall us ever coming to a conclusion if it was making a significant difference, on the iguana problem, at large on Captiva.
As I remember, I don't know that we ever were able to define the iguana problem because we don't know how many we got.
Yeah, right.
We would see the numbers used to spike in the spring or whenever he could catch a lot of babies. And often, if he got them early, we'd see a drop subsequent to that. So that was having an impact. But to tell you, I don't think we ever came up with a conclusion how many iguanas, what the total population was, and whether we were making a significant dent. It was more holding our own against the increases.
Yeah.
actually he
That's what I
caught
was
a lot
recalling.
of he has caught a lot of females, and he would gut them and show how many eggs they had. So if all those eggs had hatched, no, I think he made a big impact. And I agree with David that we are seeing, uh, I think the problem has slowed down, and it could easily explode again if we stop diminishing them.
Yeah.
Only anecdotally speaking, I can only speak to the landscaping around my house and in my HOA, which was not getting eaten up.
Yeah. Ken, maybe in your discussions with Alfredo, and again, what was the name of the other person, Brighton?
I believe it's Sanibel Captiva Wildlife Control.
Okay.
I'll get their number for you.
Okay, in conversation with them, maybe you can get some sort of assessment from them of whether they think they are having an impact. I know it may be self-serving, but I think maybe they have a way of evaluating that. And if so, then we can give that report to Jay and to the rest of the panel and try to get a sense of that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, then thank you, Brighton. And good luck on your future endeavors.
Thank you.
Okay. And I see John Wade has joined us. Welcome, John. Next is the SCCF update. Matt DePaulis. I don't see anybody from SCCF on
He's not on the list, so I'm guessing they were probably tied up.
Okay. And we'll move on to the South Seas redevelopment legal update, which I will give. We've had some, I guess I would call disappointing decisions that came down over the past month. The first was that everybody knows Judge Schenko limited development on South Seas to 912 units. That decision, which Judge Schenko issued, was reversed by the 6th District Court of Appeal. A three-panel judge, there was oral argument, I think it was on April 30th, and one of the judges came out guns drawn, basically supporting the county's position. And he then wrote the opinion for the panel of judges reversing Judge Schenko's decision that South Seas is limited to 912 dwelling units. And the decision basically took the position that the settlement agreement that was signed by the CCA, the county, the mediator, the lawyers for South Seas at that time, the lawyers for the county, and by the judge and by the lawyer for CCA, the Court of Appeal took the position that that 2003 settlement agreement was invalid, that the county did not have the authority to enter into that agreement back in 2003, and therefore it's not enforceable against the county by CCA or anybody else at this point. They basically said that that settlement agreement constituted contract zoning. And what contract zoning is when a developer signs a contract with a county or municipality to rezone a property and bypasses the public hearing process, and therefore the public can't participate in that rezoning decision or that rezoning process. But contract zoning always includes a developer or a landowner in a contract with the county. That's not what this case was. This case was CCA basically initiating this lawsuit and in a contract with the county. CCA obviously was not a landowner or a developer on South Seas. And so what the court basically did is redefine contract zoning to include non-developers contracting with the county. And that is different than what we believe different than what other district court of appeals have held as to what is contract zoning. They also took the position that the settlement agreement usurped the police powers of the county. When I say police powers, it's the authority of the county to rezone a property. And the position was that the settlement agreement prohibited that and took away their police powers. Our position was, or the CCA's position was, that the settlement agreement was just enforcing a legitimate rezoning that took place in 1973 and limited it to 912 units, and that that was violated. And what the settlement agreement did is just enforce what was a legitimate rezoning process. So nobody was bypassing a rezoning process. So in any case, that decision of Judge Schenko was reversed. The attorneys for CCA are appealing that decision. They're appealing that decision on two grounds. One is that it's a definition of contract zoning that's different than other districts. And so we have an inconsistency in the districts in Florida. And two, that it violated the constitutional right of people not to have their contracts impaired by a government agency. And there's very strong Florida law that says contracts should be sacrosanct and respected. And in this case, this contract was not. So we're hopeful that the Court of Appeals will certify this actually to the Supreme Court, and that the Supreme Court will hear it because it's of our attorney's feeling is that it's of significant public interest and importance, because it could invalidate other contracts between organizations, individuals, and government agencies. So again, that was disappointing. We think it was a bad decision. We think Judge Schenko was correct. So we'll see where that goes. The appeal to the Supreme Court and to asking the District Court of Appeal to actually certify it themselves to the Supreme Court, that's due in about 10 days. So we'll get a copy of that, and that will be distributed when it comes out. The second surprising decision that was received on the same day from the same panel of judges was a decision on the DOA case, the case where CCA and the city of Sanibel were claiming that the code amendment that exempted South Seas from the hotel density limits was violating and inconsistent with the comprehensive plan, the LEAP plan. And that appeal took place. I watched that hearing. It was 5 days of hearing, and I thought that the that the city of Sanibel and the CCA had prevailed. I was very surprised, frankly, by the decision. In any case, that decision was appealed to the same Court of Appeal, the 6th District Court of Appeal, and the same panel of judges denied that appeal on the part of the city of Sanibel and CCA. And they also didn't want to have oral argument in that case. So without oral argument, they denied the appeal, again, on the same day as the other one, which was right before the Memorial Day weekend. So anyway, that case is being appealed also. And that appeal was filed yesterday. And that'll, with the next legal update, people get a copy of that appeal. So those two things are being appealed. The third thing that's important is that the petition for writ of certiorari, which is the petition filed by the 20 petitioners, including the CCA, RLR, Royal Shell, and all the associations on South Seas, equaling 20 total petitioners, is scheduled now for a 2-hour hearing before Judge Schenko on September 4th. And the claim in that petition is that the rezoning was invalid, and that'll be provided in the legal update, a copy of that too. And it's invalid for lots of reasons, or the claims that it's invalid for lots of reasons. And if that cert petition is approved, and if CCA and all the petitioners prevail, then that rezoning that took place this past August will be invalidated. Of course, that'll get appealed. It'll probably get appealed to the same District Court of Appeal, maybe not the same panel of judges. So we shall see. I just want to add this. I didn't say it before, and I know Jay had asked me about this once before. I believe the 9/12 decision that was reversed, Judge Schenko's decision, is going to be an effort to have that reviewed by the full 12 members of the court. In other words, they're going to ask for a hearing en banc, which means a hearing before all 12 judges rather than the 3. And the answer to the question that was asked to me, can they reverse the decision of the 3? And the answer is yes. So we shall see what happens with that.
So David, just so I understand that instead of going to the state Supreme Court, the appeal would be heard by all of the judges on the appeals court. Is that?
The answer to that is the request will be to have the appeals court, all 12 on the appeals court, to hear it. They don't have to agree to do that. They're also, I believe, going to be asked to certify this case to the Supreme Court because of the conflicts in the districts and the importance of the case. So they themselves can say, we're not going to hear it, but we're going to ask the Supreme Court to hear it, in addition to our lawyers or the CCA's lawyers asking to have that heard. At the same time, you can make a direct appeal to the Supreme Court to hear it. I don't know what combinations of things are going to happen, but it may be all 3 at the same time. So the 12 judges can say, we're not going to hear it, but we're going to ask the Supreme Court to look at it. Or they can decide to hear it themselves and have a hearing in front of them, a rehearing, and then make their own decision. I don't know the answer to what they're going to do.
So David, if you're saying they can review it, they can pass it along, and if they do decide to review it and come to a conclusion, is their decision binding, or is there still a process that either party can move it forward beyond the 12?
Yes, if the 12 decide to have a rehearing before it as a group of 12, and they reverse the decision of the panel and basically reinstate Judge Schenko's decision, then the county, in theory, can then appeal at that point to the Supreme Court and ask the Supreme Court to review it.
Okay. Thank you.
Question, David. Oops.
Sure.
David, are these judges all in Lee County?
They are not just Lee County. They're a combination of Lee County and other counties. It's a new District Court of Appeal that was, I think, split off from the Sarasota bigger area. and it includes Lee County and some other parts of other counties, at least one other county. And then the other case that's important is that, well, it's not important in the sense of the rezoning, but it's important to the community, is that everybody recalls that the South Seas had sued the CCA for claiming that the 912 includes hotel units, even though it clearly included hotel units, and Judge Shenko said it included hotel units, and that the South Seas moved to have Judge Shenko disqualified from that case. And the Judge Shenko denied their motion to have him disqualified. And South Seas is now just appealed in a petition for prohibition, for a writ of prohibition, to have the Court of Appeal remove Judge Shenko from this case. So they moved to remove Judge Shenko. That motion was denied, and now they're basically petitioning the Court of Appeal to remove Judge Shenko from that case, which is frivolous to begin with, and I'm not sure why one would even do it, especially since the Court of Appeal has reversed Judge Shenko. But in any case, whether or not the 912 back in 2003 included hotel units, that case, they don't want Judge Shenko to hear that case, because he decided in his motion for granting CCA's motion for summary judgment in that case that the 1973 zoning approval and the ADD, the administrative interpretation, which is what the 2003 settlement agreement was about, included hotels as part of the 912. So anyway, and then there are a couple of cases brought by some of the South Seas associations on easements and amenities, and that litigation is continuing. And I'm not going to spend any time discussing that. I'm just going to move down. I'm going to move down the list, and then I'll ask if there are any questions. On the Rauschenberg property, we have heard nothing new, other than that they purchased it and then they subdivided it into 47 condo lots, all of which, or most of which, are smaller in size than under the county zoning would allow for construction or building. So we're not sure, at least we're not sure at this point what's happening with that property. And on the public records litigation, which is the lawsuit of where South Seas is suing the panel, suing us. This is where we are in that. In their complaint, suing the panel, they claimed in two of their paragraphs of the complaint that they received documents from other public records requests that they made of Sanibel and they made of CEPD, and I don't know what other organizations they made public record requests of besides CEPD, the panel, and South Seas. But in reviewing the other information they received from from other organizations, they believe that they have documents that show we didn't produce all the documents that they requested under the Public Records Act. But they didn't provide in their complaint as an attachment what documents they have to even suggest that we didn't provide them. And our attorney has told them if they would just tell us what they are, we would take a look again and we provide them, because we have nothing to hide here. And they have refused to provide the documents that support their allegations in the complaint. What they produced instead of the documents, my understanding is they produced a link to something like hundreds of thousands of documents they received from other organizations and told our attorneys, try to figure it out. And our attorneys are not buying that for a second. And so our attorneys have made a motion before Judge Cohen, who's got assigned this case, to disclose what documents support their allegations so that we can see what the hell they're talking about. And they've also, our attorneys have also asked for a protective order against any further depositions of any of the panel members regarding this issue. Nobody wants, our attorneys don't want anybody getting ambushed by having questions being asked about documents they haven't even seen or don't even know what they're talking about. So at this point, on June 22nd, the motion to disclose to force them to for South Seas to tell us what they're talking about, and a motion for a protective order against depositions is going to be heard by Judge Cohen. That's on June 22nd. They have rescinded all their requests for depositions of any of the panel members at this point, other than me. They've asked to depose me on June 26th, but on June 22nd, our attorneys is going to get a protective order to prevent that from happening, supposedly, because we haven't seen what documents they're talking about. And I can assure you, if there were documents that they have that we didn't disclose, for some reason, Ken didn't find them, or you didn't find them, or I didn't find them, we'll disclose them. So this lawsuit is completely unnecessary. Nonetheless, we're going forward. And then Judge Cohen, in his last status conference, case management meeting, said that if we can't resolve these issues, he will set up a 2-hour trial as to whether we're covered by the Public Records Act, and whether or not we produce what we should have produced, if anything. And that trial would take place somewhere between August 11th and September 4th. But we're way off from that at this point. But I just wanted to fill everybody in as to where we are on all the legal matters that are affecting us and the rest of Captiva. Are there any questions?
Well, David, if they somehow won their argument that the panel did not produce all the arguments, what would the remedy for that be?
We should produce them. That's it. And we're willing to
They'll
produce
say
them.
produce, and we'll say there's nothing else to produce here. We gave you everything. So
Right. Yeah. And if for some reason they have something, I mean, is it possible that somebody sent that Ken or the panel sent something to the city of Sanibel, and we didn't produce it separately? They already have it. But so then we'll look for it. And if we have it, we'll produce it. I mean, the panel is not involved in any litigation against South Seas, and the panel's not involved in any litigation against the county. And so I don't know what kind of smoking gun they think they're looking for. I don't think that's what it is. Frankly, I think they just want the community, who has been not in favor of their project of increasing density, those organizations, and we as the panel opposed the code changes that we had drafted and got changed without us knowing it. I think they just want to run up the legal fees of those people who have opposed the county in rezoning and amending our codes and Captiva Community Plan. I think that's the only thing I can imagine. Because if they said to us, hey, listen, we found these 5 documents or 10 documents, you didn't give them to us, could you check and see if you have them? We would be happy to do it. So that's where we are. I can't say anything more than that.
okay, thank you.
Any questions from the panel or the community, Ken?
Nothing from the community.
Okay. So just in terms of September 4th, the cert petition case before Judge Schenko, he scheduled 2-hour hearing on this case. So that's going to be a big case. And I'm not sure that's going to be on Zoom. I know it's going to be an in-person hearing. So if people are around, they may want to go to the courtroom and listen. Okay, next, Jay Brown, Stormwater Committee update.
Okay, on stormwater, I had a fairly lengthy phone conversation with Phil Gilligy last week. Phil being the county person that is running the stormwater consulting project for us. And he advised me that the consultant was honing in on 2 different strategies for how to control stormwater in Captiva. The first was to simply raise Captiva Drive to ensure that you could always evacuate Captiva during a storm event. That the benefit to the community would be that Captiva Drive would always be passable. That was one plan they were working on. My reaction to that plan was that told Phil that I did not think that that was, helpful. That our principal problem on Captiva was flooding of side streets and water intruding into homes on the side streets during periods of heavy rainfall event, and that if he were to raise Captiva Drive, that would only put more water on the side streets and make the situation worse. So I told him I didn't think that there was a lot of merit in pursuing, that kind of a solution strategy, you know, for this project. The second he brought up is that they were looking at a broader strategy where uh, all stormwater would be collected in the village area, brought to a common location, which would probably require a pond where stormwater would be held before it was cleaned and released into the bay waters. Apparently, the state of Florida passed a new law recently. I'm not aware of this, but this is what Phil said, that any stormwater entering uh, coastal waters has to have 80 to 90% of its nutrients removed before it can just go into the sound. So having a system where you would collect all the stormwater off the streets and then simply have a major or a single point where that stormwater would be collected and would just go directly into the sound would no longer be legal because we would not be uh, removing 80 to 90% of the nutrients in the stormwater. And so he said, we're developing that approach. We don't think it'll probably be viable because you probably don't have an area of land large enough to have a collection point of to collect all the stormwater from the village area. You wouldn't have a large enough land area to hold all the water for processing. And I said, well, how big a land area are you talking about? And he said, he didn't know that yet, but uh, that was one of the things that they would be working on in this alternative solution to the study. After hearing him this, I wrote him back and I said that, I considered it to be a waste of time to just focus on elevating Captiva Drive as a solution to our stormwater issue. That would actually make it worse better than later. And I encouraged him to focus on the village area, recognize that the main problem is flooding of the side streets in Captiva, and to follow through on creating a plan to collect and process stormwater from the village area to remove 90% of the nutrients, at least see what that's involved. And don't just make an assumption that that won't work because we don't have enough land. We have to at least carry this study far enough so that you designed the system for the village and you know how much stormwater you'd be collecting and therefore being able to come up with a reasonable size of land necessary to hold the stormwater for processing. So I wrote him that letter. He's not responded back to that letter. So that's where that stands. He said that in terms of timetable, he felt that that the consultants would be making a public presentation to Captivans during the month of August, which would be our opportunity to give input to the consultants. Then they would take our input and possibly make revisions and then issue a final report in the month of November.
Was it August, Jay, or October, they said?
It's October now is the public meeting.
Okay, so,
It was August last month, and he's now saying October.
Oh, I think, yeah.
And so I told them that October probably wasn't an optimal time for a public meeting on Captiva, that many of the residents would not yet, have returned to their Captiva residence. And I said you might want to consider holding that public meeting in November, when you'd have more residents back, in town to hold the meeting. And he has not replied to that as yet either. So that's where we stand on stormwater.
Can I ask a question or
Yeah,
two?
sure. Go ahead, Linda.
Couple. So there's obviously unbuilt land in Captiva in the village area, right?
Some, yeah.
There's significant.
Okay.
There's significant unbuilt land that we don't usually haven't considered in the past, but it would have to be seized, right? Or bought. What I'm referring to is the Rauschenberg property.
Yes, right.
And
Well, the Rauschenberg property, of course, has been bought now. So,
yes, but it's still unbuilt land. It is.
yes.
Can you legal? Can you seize land in these conditions for this kind of thing?
I don't know the answer to that.
Or they could, yeah, whatever. Okay.
That's a good point to raise. Thank you, but I don't know the answer to it.
I have no clue.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously, if it's a pond, a half-acre pond or something, we could probably figure out a way to accommodate that. If, on the other hand, it's an 80-acre lake, you're not going to be able to.
I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, right. But he doesn't have any idea yet how big the pond would have to be.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's where we stand on stormwater. Are there any more questions on stormwater? Moving on to wastewater, I still have that project on hold because I think we need clarity on what's going to happen to density at South Seas before we can develop the best stormwater plan
Wastewater.
for our wastewater plan for Captiva. I think we have to have a good idea of what the ultimate density of Captiva is going to be before we can come up with the best plan. I have mentioned in several times in past meetings that after Sanibel finished its studies, they came up with a lot of costs that we never considered, that we would have, which in my view make the partnership with Donax probably, way too expensive for Donax to serve as our processing facility. And I think we're probably going to have to go back and relook at, FGA. But before we would do that, we need to know what the total density is going to be on Captiva. So
Yeah.
that continues on hold.
Right. And the challenge that's obvious is that the FGA plant, especially if you add in a lot of new units on the Rauschenberg property, the FGUA plant would have to be expanded significantly.
Yeah, absolutely, right.
That's a challenge in itself.
It is.
So I'm not.
But if you just go through some rough numbers, which Kimley Horn has done, you can make a case that it could possibly be more economical to expand South Seas, the FGA plant, and rather than do what's required to utilize the Donax plant.
Assuming that could even happen given where its location is.
Right. And again, though, as I've said, Kimley Horn feels that they've developed a concept that would make the FGA plant sustainable on a long-term basis in spite of its present location.
Right. Thank you. Any questions for Jay on wastewater? Okay. Infrastructure Committee, Mike Bennett, is there anything new there? Hi, Mike.
There is not. I have workers in the house, so it's a little noisy, but No, nothing to report different than last month.
Okay, thank you. And the next thing on the agenda is Bayside resilience. And there's been no progress on that other than I think Linda and I had some discussions. We are going to create a committee, which is going to basically, I think there are hundreds of thousands of dollars that CEPD has already spent on studies and on work related to the Bayside resilience. And I think what we're going to have to do is, and I explained this earlier, and I just been doing other things. There are people who want to participate on that committee with Linda and anyone else on the panel who wants to do that. John Rosen would be an obvious person because he's right there on the Bayside and others. And we would then assess the Aptum report. They did a comprehensive report on Bayside resilience. We also have our own reports that have been done previously when the panel had it. And then that committee would work together and put together hopefully a pilot project of 1 or 2 pilot projects, which then we would seek funding to try to implement and sort of set up an example of what can be done and successfully be done on the Bayside to mitigate flooding and sea level rise. And hopefully that's what we can do starting next year or next season. But we need to get our act together, and I'm sort of responsible for pulling all the people together, and I'll work with Linda in doing that. And panel members, you just let me know if you want to be on that committee. I think the first thing to do would be to involve the new people and then assess the work that CEPD has done and that we've done previously and see where we are at this point and how to proceed.
David, is your thought that this committee would operate under the supervision of CEPD?
No, no, it is my view that this committee would work independently of CEPD unless CEPD personnel changes, because right now CEPD, but for I think 1 or 2 people on the erosion prevention district, we're not particularly interested in going forward on the Bayside resilience piece. If that changes, then we could work collectively with cooperatively with CEPD and make it a joint project. If CEPD is not particularly interested in doing the legwork on this, then the panel would do it. And at the point where we need to raise funds to implement a pilot project or 2, then either we'll go back to CEPD and ask them to fund it if they have the ability to do that. If not, then we'll seek funding in other places.
Well, keep in mind though that the reason that we moved the project to CEPD was their superior ability to fund resilience projects that we would come up with. And I don't know, I would think that there'd be a way we could have a working group under CEPD, and just make reports to them. And
No, they're not interested in it, Jay. They have already made a decision to put this project on hold. They're not interested in pursuing it at this point. I'm not second guessing that decision. I'm just saying that that's their decision. And so they don't have the interest in doing that. And so I think if we want it done, this committee will do it, or the panel committee will do it. And then if we have something that's worth implementing, that we feel there's something that's doable, that makes sense on the Bayside, then we can return to CEPD and ask for their support and cooperation and funding. If they're not interested at that point, then we can raise funds, hopefully from other sources, be it the federal government, the county, et cetera, as we were doing before we referred it to CEPD. But I know, I mean, I see John here. John wanted the project to continue on CEPD, but it just didn't happen. And so I think if we want to get it done, we're going to have to do it ourselves.
Okay.
Okay.
David,
Yeah.
can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you, John. Go ahead.
A separate matter, just before we close out the meeting. I just wanted to remind everybody in the community that this week is the deadline for anybody that might be interested in joining the CEPD, what you want to do is we have seats 1 and 3 are open. I know it's been made public that Mike Mullins might be, I can't speak for him, but I heard through the newspaper, I saw through the newspaper that he would be applying for a candidacy for seat 3. So seat 1 still, if anybody is interested, is still available. You go down to Lee County and you fill out some paperwork. And I can only speak for myself, but I would welcome anybody in the community who would want to get actively involved in the CEPD. June 12th is the deadline for the candidacy application.
Thank you, John. Okay.
You need to be a registered voter in Captiva.
Correct.
Okay. Next thing on the agenda is the Development Committee. Marguerite Tia-Maville.
Yeah, I am.
I use the word, I say Tia all the time since I learned how to, that's how you pronounce it. I feel like I need to do that regularly.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yes. So the date for the Mirth and Magic in February has been changed to February 10th because on the Thursday, the 11th, Big Arts always has classical concerts. And I thought it might interfere with people who want to join our event. And then the Welcome Back cruise will be back. I went to see the office, and for now, we reserved December 1st. It's a Tuesday. In the past, we've had it on a Tuesday. And if everyone thinks that would be a good date, then we can carve it in stone.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Good. That's wonderful, because having the dates, we can start finding some sponsors. Linda Leard and Mike Mullins are helping me with that also. And yeah, that's all I have to report.
Marguerite, if you need more people to work with you, please let us know. We don't want a situation where you're the cook.
Yeah, no, that.
Marguerite's some fantastic cook. You know?
I know, but she can't be the cook and the wait staff and everything else like she was last time.
Yeah, no, that was an exemption, but and yet I would like to, I can give that way because it's something I like to do, and I'm not too bad at. I have another question. If we take on, for example, the iguana control, am I also helping to get grants for it, or is that something that Ken does, or how do we go about that?
That wouldn't be directly your responsibility. That would be the responsibility of the panel working with Ken to figure out how to get grants to
Yeah.
If in fact we can't get a grant specific for that and we have to do general fundraising, then we'd have to work with you and the development committee to do that. But I think that the cost of it is such that that we really want to get some funds that are directed specifically to that. And
Yeah, and
I think
sorry.
I think people on Captiva who are incredibly generous on issues that are environmental concerns to Captiva, I think we could raise the money to do it. But I think we have to answer some of the questions as how often, whether it's effective, et cetera, that Jay raised, and then figure out how to fund it. But it's not your sole responsibility as the chair of the development committee.
Yeah, no, I was wondering about it, but I do believe that they are an invasive species, and I don't mind when they eat some flowers or some island ficus, actually. But where I mind them is where they interfere with our native wildlife. They do take over the burrows from the turtles, from burrowing owls, and so most probably there would be possibilities to find funds helping to support it.
If you can train the coyotes to eat iguanas, that would be great.
Actually, supposedly there have been sightings. I've seen photos where
Oh, yeah, I
coyotes
have
have
too.
caught. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Coyotes are eating.
raccoons. Raccoons like them.
Right. Okay. Next thing, thank you, Marguerite. Next thing on the agenda is panel members' comments. Are there any comments from the panel members on issues that either we already raised or didn't yet raise in this meeting?
Actually, David, there's one thing I should have raised earlier and I forgot to. You probably need to appoint a nominating committee because you have a panel appointment that's going to be termed out at the end of this year.
Okay. Okay, I will make sure there's a nominating committee appointed by next meeting. Okay?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, any comments from panel members? Okay, any comments, Ken, from anyone listening into this meeting?
No, there are not.
Wow. Okay, it is now 10:18. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So
Motion
moved.
to,
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second then.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, so this meeting is adjourned. We will see everybody in July. Ken, you'll get back to us and we'll figure out how to have something in the interim regarding the iguanas. Okay? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
David, thank you for everything.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.